The transport shuttle docked with a soft hiss, and Dr. Hana Choi stepped onto the Volrathi Embassy station for the first time. She carried only one bag over her shoulder and a data tablet in her hand. The station was massive, filled with aliens from dozens of worlds. She had seen pictures before, but standing here among towering beings with scales, fur, and features she could barely understand made her heart beat faster. Hannah was 28 years old, small even for a human woman, with dark hair pulled into a simple ponytail. She wore practical clothes and comfortable shoes. She had studied xenobiology and animal behavior on Earth, working with everything from frightened rescue dogs to traumatized zoo animals. When the Galactic Council opened positions for human specialists, she applied without thinking twice. Now she was here, about to start a job she barely understood. A massive figure approached her. It walked on 4 legs, but stood upright on 2, with 4 powerful arms and a face that reminded Hana of a lion mixed with something ancient and proud. Golden fur covered its body, and its eyes were deep amber. The creature wore a military uniform decorated with symbols Hana could not read. "Dr. Choi," the being said through a translation device on its collar. The voice was deep and rumbling. "I am Commander Vorath. Follow me." Hana followed, trying not to stare. The Vorathi were even more impressive in person. Vorath led her through corridors filled with other species until they reached a quieter section of the station. They stopped outside a large door marked with Volrathi symbols. "You will care for the defective ones," Vorath said. There was disgust in his voice. "Our physicians have failed. Our trainers have failed. The Council believes humans might offer something different. I doubt this, but orders are orders." "Defective?" Hana asked carefully. Vorath's amber eyes narrowed. "They cannot roar. 5 cubs, all from different families, all stationed here with their parents. They should have developed their battle roar by now. Instead, they make pathetic sounds like injured prey. It is shameful." The door opened. Inside was a large room with harsh white lights and padded floors. Training equipment lined the walls, heavy weights, striking posts, obstacle courses. In the center of the room, 5 small Volrathi huddled together in a corner. They were children. Hana saw that immediately. They had the same basic shape as Vorath, but smaller, their fur softer, their features not yet fully formed. They looked at her with wide, frightened eyes. When they saw Vorath, they pressed closer together, trembling. "Cubs," Vorath barked. "Stand and greet the human." The 5 cubs scrambled to their feet. They were trying to stand straight and proud, but Hana could see their legs shaking. The largest cub was maybe 4 feet tall. The smallest barely reached Hana's waist. "Demonstrate," Vorath commanded. The cubs looked at each other with panic in their eyes. The largest one stepped forward. He was golden brown with darker stripes. He opened his mouth wide, his small fangs showing. His whole body tensed. His 4 arms clenched into fists. A sound came out. It was thin and weak, more like a kitten's mew than anything else. The cub closed his mouth quickly, shame flooding his face. "Again," Vorath said coldly. "Louder." The cub tried again. This time, the sound was even weaker. His eyes filled with water tears. Hana realized. These alien children could cry just like human children. "Pathetic," Vorath said. "All of them are the same. By Volrathi law, any cub who cannot roar by age 10 cycles is lost. They are exiled from the warrior castes. They bring shame to their families. These 5 have 6 weeks remaining before final judgment." Hana watched the cubs. They had stopped trying to stand proud. Their ears were flat against their heads. Their tails were tucked. They looked exactly like abused animals she had worked with on Earth, creatures who had been punished so many times for failing that they had stopped trying. Have they always been unable to roar? Hannah asked quietly. They produced normal cub sounds until 2 cycles ago. Then they stopped developing. The physicians say nothing is wrong with their throats or lungs. It makes no sense. Hannah knelt down slowly, making herself smaller. The cubs watched her with confusion. She smiled gently. "Hello," she said softly. "My name is Hannah. I'm here to help you." The smallest cub, a silvery female with white markings, tilted her head. She had never heard anyone speak to her so gently before. "You are wasting time," Vareth said. "They must be trained hard." "They must." "Commander," Hannah interrupted, standing up. "With respect, if harsh training worked, it would have worked by now. Give me 2 weeks. Let me try something different." Vareth's ears flicked with annoyance. What could a small human possibly do that Volrathi warriors could not? Hannah looked at the cubs again. She saw fear, shame, and exhaustion. She had seen it before in animals who had been pushed too hard, expected to be something they could not yet be. "I can listen," she said simply. "That might." Hannah sat in her small quarters and reviewed everything she knew about trauma responses in young animals. She thought about learned helplessness, about how creatures could be taught to believe they were powerless. She thought about the cubs' body language, the tucked tails, the flattened ears, the way they huddled together. These cubs were not defective. They were terrified. And tomorrow, she would begin to teach them something the Volrathi had forgotten. That courage could not be beaten into someone. It had to be grown, carefully and patiently. Like a seed in good soil. Hannah turned off her tablet and looked out the window at the stars beyond. Somewhere out there was Earth, where humans had learned thousands of years ago that kindness was not weakness. It was time to share that lesson with the galaxy. Hannah arrived at the training room early the next morning with 3 other humans and 4 large containers. Commander Vareth stood outside the door with his arms crossed, watching with obvious disapproval. "What is all this?" he demanded. "Supplies," Hannah said simply. She nodded to the tall man beside her. "This is Do-Hyun Park. He works in the station gardens. This is Yoonji Lee, a teacher. And this is Woojin Han, a musician. A gardener? A teacher of infants? A noisemaker?" Vareth's voice rose. "The cubs need warriors to train them, not soft humans playing games." Hannah met his eyes calmly. "The cubs need something they've never had before. Trust me for 2 weeks. If you see no progress, you can return to your methods." Vareth wanted to argue, but his orders from the council were clear. He stepped aside with a growl of frustration. Inside, the 5 cubs were already waiting, pressed into the same corner as yesterday. When they saw the humans enter with containers, their ears perked up slightly with curiosity. Hannah addressed them in a gentle voice, her translation device converting her words. "Good morning. I know you're scared. I know you've been told you're broken, but I don't believe that. Today, we're going to do something different. No more training. No more commands. Today, we're going to rest." The cubs looked at each other in confusion. Rest? What did that mean? Do-Hyun opened the first container and pulled out soft cushions and blankets. He spread them across the floor, creating comfortable spaces. The cubs had never seen anything like this in their training room. Everything had always been hard and cold. "You can sit anywhere you like," Hannah said. "Or lie down. Whatever feels good." The largest cub, whose name was Cairo, took a cautious step forward. He touched a cushion with one paw, then looked back at his fellow cubs. Slowly, carefully, he lowered himself onto it. His eyes widened. It was soft, comfortable. The others followed. The silvery female, Bryn, curled up on a blue cushion with a small sound of relief. A reddish-brown cub named Nethys stretched out fully for the first time in weeks. Torvin and Liska, the other 2 cubs, chose cushions near each other. Ju opened the second container. Inside were simple toys, soft balls, puzzles, picture books from Earth, showing animals and landscapes. She sat down on the floor near the cubs and started showing them pictures. "This is a lion," Yunji said, displaying an image on her tablet. "They live on our planet Earth. They're very strong like you. But when lion cubs are young, they play. They learn by playing, not by being scared." The cubs inched closer to look at the pictures. They had never been allowed to simply look at something interesting before. Everything had always been about training, training, training. Woojin opened his container and removed a strange object, a wooden flute from Earth. He played a soft, gentle melody. The sound filled the room like water, flowing and peaceful. The cubs' ears swiveled toward the sound. Their bodies relaxed. "Music helps humans feel calm," Hana explained. "It helps us think clearly. When we're afraid, music reminds us that the world can be beautiful." Over the next hour, Hana simply sat with the cubs. She asked them questions. What did they like to eat? What did they dream about? What made them happy? At first, the cubs didn't know how to answer. No one had ever asked them these things before. But slowly, carefully, they began to speak. Bryn liked the stars. She would watch them through the station windows at night.kyr liked stories about brave heroes from Velrathi history. Nevis liked the feel of sunlight from the station's solar gardens. Torvin liked the smell of food cooking in the station's kitchens. Liska liked the sound of ships docking and undocking, the hum of engines, the whoosh of airlocks. These were normal, simple things. The things children liked. Hana smiled and nodded at each answer, never judging, never demanding more. When Do-yoon spoke, his deep voice was surprisingly gentle for such a large man. "On Earth, we have a saying, a plant cannot grow if you pull on it. You must give it water, sunlight, and time." He looked at the cubs kindly. "You are not broken. You're just growing in a place that hasn't been giving you what you need." That afternoon, Hana dismissed the cubs early. They left the room slowly, looking back with confusion. For the first time, they weren't exhausted. They weren't in pain from harsh training. They felt strange, different. The next few days followed the same pattern. Hana and her human friends created a space that was safe and soft. They told stories. They played quiet games. They asked questions and listened to answers. They never demanded anything. Commander Varth watched from the observation window, his frustration growing. They are accomplishing nothing. The cubs sit on cushions like lazy pets. But Hana noticed things Vorath could not. She saw how the cubs' body language was changing. Their ears no longer stayed flat against their heads. Their tails began to move naturally. They made eye contact more often. They even started to play with each other during breaks, batting at the soft balls Yunji had brought, pouncing and tumbling like normal children. On the 5th day, something remarkable happened. Bryn laughed, thought it was a small sound, chittering and light, but it was genuine joy. She was playing with a puzzle, and when she solved it, the happiness burst out of her. The other cubs stared at her, then at each other. When was the last time any of them had laughed? Hana caught Yunji's eye across the room. The teacher smiled. This was progress, real progress. That evening, Hana met with Commander Vorath in his office. He was angry, pacing back and forth. "The council is asking for updates," he growled. "What do I tell them? That the cubs are playing with toys? That they're learning nothing? They're learning the most important thing," Hana said calmly. "They're learning that they're allowed to be children. They're learning that making mistakes is okay. They're learning that they don't have to be afraid every moment of every day. That is not the Volrathi way. Maybe the Volrathi way is why they can't roar," Hana said quietly. Vorath froze. His 4 fists clenched. For a moment, Hana thought he might attack her. Then he simply turned away. "You have 9 days remaining," he said coldly. "If they cannot roar by then, they go to exile, and your human methods will be proven worthless." Hannah left his office and returned to her quarters. 9 days. It seemed impossible. But she had seen the change in the cubs already. They were beginning to remember what it felt like to be alive, not just afraid. Tomorrow she would begin the next phase. Now that they could rest, now that they could feel safe, she would help them find their voices, not through force, but through trust. The days passed quickly. Hannah continued her gentle approach, but she knew time was running short. 8 days left. 7. 6. The cubs were different now, happier, more playful, more trusting. But they still could not roar. Whenever Hannah tried to guide them toward making louder sounds, they tensed up immediately. The fear came rushing back. On the 4th day of the 2nd week, Hannah brought the cubs to a new room. It was the station's virtual reality chamber, used for training simulations. She had programmed something special. "Today, I want to show you something from my home," she said. The lights dimmed. Suddenly, the cubs were standing in a golden grassland under a bright sun. The air smelled like dry grass and warm earth. In the distance, they could see a group of animals that looked similar to Velrathi, but smaller, without the extra arms. "These are lions from Earth," Hannah explained. "They're predators, like your ancestors. Watch them." The simulation showed a lioness and her cubs. The cubs were playing, tumbling over each other, biting at their mother's tail. The mother was patient, letting them climb on her. When one cub ventured too far, she made a low rumbling sound, not angry, just calling him back. The Velrathi cubs watched in silence. They had never seen adults of a similar species act this way. Velrathi parents were strict, focused on discipline and strength. But this lioness seemed to enjoy her cubs. She groomed them with her tongue. She nuzzled them. "See how the mother teaches them?" Hannah said softly. "She doesn't yell. She doesn't punish. She shows them by example. She protects them while they learn." Kyrill's tail swished slowly. "Our parents are not like this," he said quietly. "I know," Hannah replied. "Your parents love you, but they're worried. They're afraid you'll be exiled, so they've been hard on you. But sometimes, fear makes us act in ways that hurt the ones we love." The simulation continued. The lion cubs started making sounds, squeaks, grunts, little roars that were more like loud meows. The mother didn't criticize. She just stayed near them, calm and steady. "They're practicing," Nethys observed. "But they're not afraid to sound silly." "Exactly," Hannah said. "They know it's okay to be imperfect while they're learning." After the simulation ended, the cubs were quiet. They had a lot to think about. That evening, as the other cubs left for dinner with their families, Bryn stayed behind. She was the smallest, the one who seemed most frightened of everything. She approached Hannah slowly, her head low. "Dr. Choi?" she said in a tiny voice. Hannah knelt down to Bryn's level. "Yes, Bryn." The small cub's eyes were filled with tears. What if? What if I'm not supposed to roar? What if I'm wrong inside? What if I'm broken and can never be fixed?" Hannah felt her heart break a little. She had heard these exact words before from a scared child on Earth who believed he couldn't learn to read. From a dog who had been abused so badly it couldn't remember how to trust. The words were always the same. What if I'm broken? She reached out slowly and placed her hand on Bryn's soft furred head. The cub didn't pull away. "Bryn," Hannah said gently, "do you know what I think? I think you're not broken at all. I think you're just scared. And that's okay. Fear means you care about something. It means you're alive and you feel things deeply. There's nothing wrong with that." "But I can't roar," Bryn whispered. "I try, and nothing comes out but weak sounds. Everyone thinks I'm a failure." Hannah moved her hand to the cub's shoulder. Can I tell you a secret? When I was your age, I was afraid to speak in front of people. My teachers would call on me in class, and my voice would disappear. I felt broken too, but I wasn't broken. I just needed time and people who believed in me. How did you fix it? Bryn asked. I didn't fix it all at once. I practiced in small ways. I spoke to one friend, then two, then three. I learned that my voice mattered, even when it shook with fear. And one day, I realized I wasn't afraid anymore. Bryn looked up at Hannah with wide, hopeful eyes. Do you think I could learn like that? I don't just think it. I know it. Hannah's voice was soft but certain. Bryn, you have a voice. You have a roar inside you, but it's buried under all the fear and shame that's been piled on top of it. We need to clear that away first. How? Hannah smiled. By trying for yourself, not for them. Not for the commander. Not for your parents. Not for anyone but you. Try because you want to know what it feels like. Try because you're curious about your own strength. Bryn was quiet for a long moment. Then she nodded slowly. Okay, Hannah said gently. Right now in this room, it's just you and me. No one is watching. No one is judging. I want you to make a sound, any sound. It doesn't have to be a roar. It doesn't have to be loud. Just make a sound that feels true to you. Bryn's whole body tensed. Hannah could see the fear trying to take over. Breathe, Hannah whispered. Just breathe. You're safe. Bryn took a shaky breath. Then another. Her 4 small fists unclenched. She opened her mouth. A sound came out, not a roar, not even close. It was a rumble, low and uncertain. But it was louder than anything Bryn had made in months. Good, Hannah whispered, and there were tears in her eyes now too. That was good. Now, try again. Bryn looked at Hannah's face and saw something she had never seen before when she tried to roar. Pride. Not disappointment. Not frustration. Pride. The cub tried again. This time, the sound was stronger. It came from deeper in her chest. It wasn't a roar yet, but it was a growl, small but real. Bryn's eyes went wide. I did it, she breathed. I made a real sound. You did, Hannah said, and now she was crying openly. You absolutely did. And tomorrow, you'll try again. And the day after that. And each time, it will get easier. Bryn stared at her paws, then at Hannah, then back at her paws. For the first time in her life, she felt something new. Hope. When Bryn left the room that night, she was walking differently. Her head was higher. Her tail wasn't tucked. And in her heart was a tiny flame of belief. The belief that maybe, just maybe, she wasn't broken after all. In her quarters, Hannah sent a message to Dohyun, Yoonji, and Woojin. We had a breakthrough. Tomorrow we move forward. The next morning, when the cubs gathered in their room, something was different. Bryn walked in with her head held higher than usual. The other 4 cubs noticed immediately. Bryn? Kyril asked. What happened? Bryn looked at her friends, then at Hannah, who was setting up for the day. Last night, she said quietly, I made a growl. A real one. Not loud, but real. The room went silent. The other cubs stared at her with wide eyes. You did? Liska breathed. How? Dr. Hannah helped me, Bryn said. She told me to try for myself, not for anyone else. And when I did, something was different. The fear was still there, but it wasn't as big anymore. Kyril's ears perked forward. Nethys's tail began to swish. Torvin and Liska exchanged glances. If Bryn could do it, the smallest, most frightened of them all, then maybe they could too. Hannah watched this exchange and smiled. This was exactly what she had hoped for. Sometimes one person's courage could light a fire in others. Today, Hannah announced, We're gonna work on finding your voices. All of you. But we're gonna do it the human way, with patience, support, and no judgment. Woojin stepped forward with his instruments. First, we need to understand how sound works, he said. He played a note on his flute soft and low. This is a small sound. Then he played a note on a drum deep and resonant. This is a big sound. Both are valid. Both are beautiful. The difference is in the breath, the intention, and the confidence. He showed the cubs how to breathe deeply, filling their lungs completely. How to let the air out slowly and with control. How sound came from the diaphragm, not just the throat. Yoonji brought out mirrors so each cub could watch themselves. Sometimes we're afraid of our own power, she explained. Watching yourself can help you see that you're not scary, you're strong. Dahyun sat with each cub individually, his big, gentle presence calming. A roar isn't about anger, he told Kyril. It's about confidence. It's saying, I am here. I matter. I take up space in this world. That's not aggression. That's self-respect. One by one, the humans worked with each cub. They celebrated every small sound, every tiny improvement. When Nephis managed a rumble that lasted 3 seconds, Yoonji clapped with genuine joy. When Torvin produced a growl that made the floor vibrate slightly, Woojin grinned and said, Now that's music. The cubs began to change. They started encouraging each other. When Liska was struggling, Rin patted over and said, Remember what Dr. Hannah said. Try for you, not for them. When Kyril got frustrated, Nephis reminded him, It's okay to sound silly while learning. The Earth Lions did it. 3 days passed. The cubs were making real progress. Their sounds grew deeper, stronger, more confident. They weren't roars, yet not the earth-shaking battle roars of adult Valrethi, but they were getting closer. Commander Varth watched from the observation window, his expression unreadable. Other Velrathi had begun to gather too, curious about what the humans were doing. They saw their cubs laughing, playing, making sounds without fear. It was strange, unsettling, but also some of the Velrathi parents noticed their cubs seemed happier than they had been in months. On the evening of the 3rd day, Hannah gathered all 5 cubs together. Tomorrow, she said, the council representative arrives for your final evaluation. You have 1 more day to practice. The cubs' ears flattened slightly. The fear tried to creep back in. But, Hannah continued, I want you to remember something. A roar is just a sound. It doesn't measure your worth. It doesn't define who you are. You are brave, kind, and strong, no matter what sounds you make. Do you understand? Then why do we have to roar? Torvin asked quietly. Because it's part of your culture, Hannah said honestly. And because I believe you can. But more importantly, because I think you'll feel proud of yourselves when you do. Not because anyone else will approve, but because you'll know what you overcame to get there. That night, the cubs stayed late, practicing together. They formed a circle, like they had done so many times before with the humans. But this time, they were alone. I'm scared, Bryn admitted. Me too, said Nephis. We all are, Kyril said. But we're scared together. That makes it easier, doesn't it? They practiced their breathing. They practiced their growls. They encouraged each other when the sounds came out wrong. And slowly, something began to happen. When they growled together, the sounds combined. They resonated. Each cub's voice made the other's voices stronger. Again, Liska said excitedly. Try again, all together. They did. This time, the combined sound was deeper, more powerful. It rattled the training equipment on the walls. The cubs looked at each other with wonder. Separately, they were still learning. But together, they were strong. The next morning, Hannah arrived early to find all 5 cubs already awake, already practicing. Do-hyun, Yoonji, and Woojin joined her at the door, watching silently. Will they make it? Yoonji whispered. I don't know, Hana admitted. But I know they've already won in the most important way. They believe in themselves again. Commander Vorath appeared behind them, his heavy footsteps announcing his presence. The council representative has arrived, he said grimly. The demonstration will begin in 1 hour. The cubs will stand before the Velrathi High Court observer and perform, or they will be declared lost. The humans looked at each other. 1 hour. After all this work, all this progress, everything came down to 1 hour. Hana walked into the room. The cubs turned to look at her, and she saw in their eyes determination, fear, hope, and trust, all mixed together. It's time, she said gently. Are you ready? Kyril stood up first. We're ready, he said, and his voice didn't shake. The other 4 cubs stood with him. They moved close together, drawing strength from each other. Remember, Hana said, you're not doing this for them. You're doing this for you. You're doing this because you can, because you are strong and brave, and you deserve to roar. The cubs nodded. Together, they walked toward the demonstration chamber where their future waited. The demonstration chamber was filled with beings from across the galaxy. Velrathi officials stood in formal rows, their golden fur gleaming under the bright lights. Representatives from the Galactic Council observed from raised platforms. News drones hovered in corners, recording everything. At the center of it all, a single Velrathi larger than Commander Vorath sat on an elevated throne. This was the High Court Observer, sent from the Velrathi homeworld to make the final judgment. In the middle of the chamber, 5 small cubs stood alone. They looked tiny under the harsh lights, surrounded by so many watching eyes. Their ears were pressed back. Their tails were tucked. All the progress they had made seemed to evaporate in the face of this terrifying moment. The High Court Observer spoke, his voice booming through translation devices. These cubs stand accused of deficiency. They have failed to develop the sacred battle roar. This is their final opportunity to prove they are true Velrathi, or they will be declared lost. Commander Vorath stepped forward. Begin the demonstration, he commanded the cubs. The cubs stood frozen. Kyril opened his mouth, but no sound came out. Nethys tried to step forward, but her legs wouldn't move. Torvin's 4 fists were clenched so tight they shook. Liska and Bren pressed close to each other, trembling. The fear had won. The seconds stretched out. The observers began to murmur. The High Court Observer's expression darkened. They cannot even attempt it, he said with disgust. This is shameful. Prepare the exile. Footsteps echoed through the chamber. Everyone turned to look. Hana walked onto the demonstration floor. She wasn't supposed to be there. It was against protocol. But she didn't care. Behind her came Do-hyun, Yoonji, and Woojin. The 4 humans walked calmly to stand beside the cubs. Dr. Choi, Commander Vorath growled. You violate sacred proceedings. Hana ignored him. She knelt down beside the cubs, making herself level with them. She didn't speak to the observers or the officials. She spoke only to the 5 children in front of her. Her voice soft but clear enough for the chamber's acoustics to carry. Look at me, she said gently. 5 pairs of frightened eyes turned to her. Remember what we practiced, Hana continued. Not for them. Not because you have to. Because you can. Because you are strong. Because you are Velrathi, and no one can take that from you. She placed her hand on Bryn's shoulder, the way she had done that first evening when everything changed. Together, she whispered. Something shifted in Bryn's eyes. Then in Kairos. The fear was still there, but beneath it was something stronger. The memory of all those days of practice, of encouragement, of discovering they weren't broken after all. The cubs moved without speaking. They formed a circle, like they had done 100 times in practice. They pressed their sides together, drawing strength from each other. They closed their eyes. Hana stepped back, joining the other humans. They watched, barely breathing. For a moment, nothing happened. The chamber was completely silent. Then Chiral began. His roar started as a low rumble in his chest. It built slowly, growing deeper, stronger. It wasn't perfect or polished, but it was real, unmistakably real. The floor began to vibrate. Net has joined him. Her roar was higher pitched, but no less powerful. It harmonized with Chiril's, the two sounds weaving together like music. Torvin added his voice next. He was the largest cub, and his roar was deep, primal, a bass rumble that made the observation platform shake. Several officials grabbed railings to steady themselves. Liska's roar came sharp and clear, cutting through the air like a blade. It was the roar of a warrior issuing a challenge. And then Bryn, the smallest, the one who had been most afraid, opened her mouth and released a roar so pure and powerful that the observation window cracked. Hairline fractures spread across the reinforced glass like lightning. The 5 cubs roared together. The sound was massive, overwhelming, shaking the entire demonstration chamber. Equipment rattled. The news drones wobbled in the air. Some of the observers covered their ears. It wasn't just noise. It was a declaration. It was 5 children who had been told they were broken, proving they were whole. It was courage made into sound. It was the moment when everything changed. When the roar finally ended, the silence that followed was absolute. Dust motes hung in the air. The cubs stood in their circle, panting, their eyes wide with shock at what they had just done. Then Commander Vorath did something no one expected. He dropped to one knee, placing his right fist over his heart, the Velrathi gesture of deepest respect. His voice was thick with emotion. "We are witness," he said. "These cubs are true Velrathi." Every Velrathi in the chamber followed his lead, kneeling in unison. The High Court observer rose from his throne, and even he knelt, bowing his great head. "The judgment is clear," the observer said. "These cubs have proven themselves. They are not lost, they are found." The cubs looked at each other, not quite believing it was over. Then Bryn began to cry, not from fear this time, but from relief and joy. The other cubs piled around her, all of them talking at once, laughing and crying together. Hana felt Yunji squeeze her hand. Woojing was openly wiping tears from his eyes. Dohyun put a hand on Hana's shoulder and said quietly, "You did it." "They did it," Hana corrected. "We just reminded them they could." In the days that followed, Hana's method spread throughout the Galactic Council. Other species requested human consultants for their struggling young. Research papers were written. Hana was invited to speak at conferences across multiple worlds, but her favorite moment came 2 weeks after the demonstration. She was sitting in the station's observation lounge, watching ships come and go, when Commander Vorath found her. He stood beside her silently for a moment, then said, "I do not understand. How did you know they could roar when our own experts declared it impossible?" Hana looked up at him. "I didn't know they could," she said honestly. "But I knew something more important. I knew they deserved the chance to discover it themselves. I knew they needed someone to believe in them when they couldn't believe in themselves." Vorath's ears tilted thoughtfully. "This is the human way?" "It's one of them," Hana said with a small smile. "We learned a long time ago that fear and punishment can force obedience. But only kindness and patience can grow true strength." Through the window, they could see Bryn and the other cubs playing in the solar garden with Dohyun, their laughter carrying through the station's corridors. They were teaching a new group of young Velrathi the things the humans had taught them: patience, encouragement, the freedom to fail without shame. "Try again," Bryn was saying to a struggling youngster, her voice gentle but confident. "It's okay. You're not broken. You just need time." Hana watched them and felt her heart swell with pride. This was what humans could offer the galaxy, not superior technology or military might, but the simple, revolutionary belief that everyone deserved kindness, especially those who were struggling most. And sometimes, that belief could change everything.